Hi everybody, good morning. This is Aoife. I'm here today for two reasons. One, because I'm extremely privileged to be invited by your esteemed organization. But there's also a deeper reason. A reason because way back in 1996, I promised you that I would. You see, my journey wasn't an easy one. I'll never forget that day back in 1996. It was a hot summer day in the student town of Pune. I was 23 years old. I left home when I was 16, and growing up on my own had made me pretty much bitter towards my parents. And that's just to put it lightly. We didn't meet very often, and whenever we did, we had a fake conversation that usually ended with a real fight. Well, being 23 and being on your own, you can imagine. But somehow that afternoon, back in Pune, in my tiny little apartment, life had put me in the most compromising of all positions. A position that I wouldn't want anyone to imagine themselves to be in. A day earlier, I had crashed. And no, I don't mean crashed as in one of my old drug habits. Yes, I was an established model back then, but I was also a struggling addict. 6 months earlier, I had been walking the ramp in Milan. I just loved it. I'd come back home, I thought I'd move, I was getting my paperwork done. Things were taking time because I wanted to take my best friend back with me, my doggy Chick, and I couldn't really figure out how to do that. But now, back in the afternoon, at home, lying in bed with my wounds, my head was split open, my legs were smashed, busted cartilages, busted ligaments. I'd been lying in bed for about 8 hours before my parents arrived. And although I knew I should be really grateful to have them there, all I could think of was how could I get my next cigarette? Deep inside, I had this fight going on. Couldn't they just leave? Couldn't I just get my next hit? God knows I really needed a cigarette back then. But life doesn't always put you in the kind of situation that you always hope to be. So anyways, Mom used Dad's help, and they both get me to the bathroom. My jeans were still torn and tattered. The blood and the dirt had now begun to kind of coagulate and heal and stick together. It was really an ugly sight. But Mom and Dad get me to the bathroom, and my father worriedly and politely went outside. He was pacing up and down the hall, calling up doctors and finding a hospital to get me to. And my mom had decided to wash my wounds. So she gets me changed, and there I was. Shockwaves of pain hit me as the first few mugs of water washed over me. My mother was really nervous. I could feel her hands shaking. You know, the whole mug of water was kind of rattling in her hands. I could see her lips quivering. I could have helped her. I could have said something nice. I could have said, hey, Mom, it's okay, thank you. Or, I love you, Mom, something like that. I could have. But you know, the lesser in me chose not to. Instead, I snapped at her, not once, not twice, but 3 times, for not being gentle enough while pouring the water on me. The poor thing was shaking, quivering. She went and stood behind me, and she started crying. I knew she was crying, and I knew she was hiding from me. She kissed me on the back of my head, and she said, you know what, sweetheart? I'll just be back in a moment. Give me a minute. And she ran out of the bathroom. I sat there all by myself in that bathroom. I'll never forget the sound of the water drops in the bucket. I tried getting up. I couldn't manage. A fashionable stack of skin and bones. I could hear the muffled voices of my parents outside. And somewhere from the closed doors, I could hear my father consoling my mother, both of them crying. And he said, what can we do, sweetheart, when fate just hasn't written out our children's love for us? And they were both crying. Sitting there in that moment, I realized that if I had died the day before in the accident, this is the exact scene and the exact dialogue between my parents as it would be. This is probably exactly what they would have been saying to each other, consoling each other. In that moment, I realized that my life meant nothing. That if I had died the day earlier, it would have made absolutely no difference to anybody or anything. That's how much I had contributed to my parents. That's how much I had contributed to my world. And in that moment, I decided that I was going to change things. I decided that I had a choice back then, and I was going to take the better road ahead. I decided I was going to take my life around, and when I did, I was going to come back to tell my story and help others who were in that same miserable, dark place. A place that's so dark, where you feel so unidentified, so misunderstood, so unloved, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, that although suicide sounds like a really big word, you do think about what it would be like to just turn the lights off one night and never wake up to the pain and the shame again. Well, thereafter, it wasn't easy. I knew I had a purpose, but I just didn't know what that purpose was. But finding the purpose became something I really looked forward to. And what do you think happens when you find your purpose? Things don't become easy, I can tell you that for sure. It only makes you go harder for life. And when you go harder, things only become more tougher. The pain only increases. After 1 month of searching, knocking at every plastic surgeon's office, I was told that my face couldn't be fixed, the infection had spread too much, I had to accept scars as a part of my personality. It took me 1 month to find a medical student who had just returned from the US, who decided to experiment with a new technique. He said that there were no guarantees. Most of the procedures were done without general anesthetic. These were procedures done on my face, not once, twice, but sometimes 3 times a week. But 6 months later, this angel of mercy gave me back my face. And along with that, a ton of confidence and a ton of strength in who I truly was and what beauty truly meant to me and what health and strength truly meant to me. Thereafter, I started to try and get my legs fixed. Well, the orthopedic surgeon said I'm going to need some surgery, and that if I refused surgery, that I would be in a wheelchair instead of the crutches that I had been using. I didn't like the doctor much. I was young, I was reckless, I was sick and tired of being under the knife for months before that, and so I just refused surgery. I went home. A few weeks later, I rediscovered my passion for fitness and a new love called yoga. And with the grace of God, 8 months later, I ran my first run, back to the same orthopedic surgeon who now called it a medical miracle. Of course it was. I had to agree. It was a miracle by the gods. But I also had to remind him that I had played my part. So why is it that purpose is so important, for me at least? I think purpose really allows us to write our own destiny than to be written off by our fate. Fate, I say, is what life gives you. Destiny is what we make of it. You get me? If I'm 5'6", I'm always going to be 5'6", never going to be 6'2". That's fate. But I love doing what I do. I love going out there and making people fitter and healthier and telling them about the better things they can eat, better ways they can move. And that for me is destiny. God gave me broken legs. I learned to heal them. And not only that, today I can go out and teach people how to heal their bodies in ways that they didn't think that was possible. That's destiny for me. And I think that's a really, really important part for all of us. So when we come across fate and destiny, I think the main thing that stops us from really accepting ourselves as masters of our destiny is what Napoleon Hill called the 6 ghosts of fear. All of us, whenever we want to achieve a goal, these are the guys we come across. And most of us in a healthy, normal scenario learn to go past it. What do? We still get through the fears. We fall, we fight, we get ridiculed, we get up again, and then we go again, and we fall again, and we go again, and that's how we grow. That's how human beings grow. You see, when I was an addict, I was happy. I know it sounds strange, but I was happy. Years later, when I cleaned up, I wasn't happy. I'd become a clean, healthy person who had no passion anymore. And any person who has cleaned up cold turkey knows what I'm talking about. It isn't easy because suddenly there's just no spark. There's no point going to the parties. There's no point having the conversations. There's no point trying to get yourself involved with the family because you just feel nobody understands what you feel like. It just seems like life just isn't worth living anymore. And when I later on, years later, started looking for some way of getting that passion back, that spark back, I read books, I went through audio tapes, but there was nothing till one day I finally came across this amazing concept, a concept called goal setting. The simple act of writing down on paper all the things that you want to achieve into your future and writing them down as if they've already happened. And I remember the first time I did that, wow, it was like my brain lit up, man. It was like I was on a high again. This time there was no intoxication. And I was happy and my brain was buzzing. And I became intrigued. What is it? What is this amazing thing going on inside my brain right now? Why haven't I learned it before? Why wasn't I taught this in school? I wouldn't have ever reached for that cigarette. And that's when I started looking into science a little bit further. And to make a very long story short, I realized it's a game between two important hormones, serotonin and dopamine. These are hormones everyone should know about, not just doctors. Serotonin plus dopamine equals to happiness. So in a healthy brain, in a normal healthy brain, serotonin is being secreted all the time. You want something right now, that's serotonin. It's the biochemical signature of the emotion of desire. So what do? You step out of your comfort zone and you start doing things that you wouldn't have ever thought of doing before. And that's how you grow. We all want things, not just because of the things. We want them because that's going to bring out a part of yourself that hasn't been brought before, right? You don't want the car because of the car. You want how you're going to feel when you sit in the car. So when you're looking at serotonin and dopamine, a healthy person is going to step out of their comfort zone, go through their fears, and still go ahead and achieve the things that they want. Let me show you this. So that's a normal brain. You set a goal, you've got serotonin buzzing, you go through the 6 ghosts of fear, you fail, you fall, you get up again, you go again, and so on the journey continues. Finally, you achieve the goal, and you sit back, and you say, I passed the exam, I topped the paper, I got into Harvard, I saved the war, I fed the poor people, whatever it is. And then you feel really good. The most well-deserved high in the world. The real one, the natural one, dopamine. But what happens when you don't have that strength to go through your fears? Let's see. So there's serotonin happening in the addict's brain. Needs to do something. Desires are coming up, starts dreaming about them, but is caught up with his or her fears. Refuses to step out of his comfort zone. No dopamine secretion leads to extreme levels of depression. And what do you find? You find a drug, you find a smoke, you find the dope. Why do you think dope is called dope, guys? Did you ever think about that? Why is slang for marijuana called dope? Comes from the word dopamine. It mimics the hormone dopamine. So when you smoke it, you think you are it. Right? So your brain says, hey, that's cool, you've achieved everything, you can chill back now, and that's how you see smokers, right? Hey man, yeah, chill buddy, what's the hurry, man? Right? They're high on dopamine. What happens when the dope comes down? They're depressed again, right? And you're back into the same place where you first started. So goal setting is the most easiest way to make yourself happy. It's the easiest way for us to grow. That's why we are here. If we don't fail, if we don't get ridiculed, if we don't fall and we don't learn to stand up again, how are we ever going to grow? How are we going to ever achieve all the things that we wanted to achieve and become the people that we hope to become? So all I need to say today is, guys, think about it. What are your goals? What is it that's going to drive you? Where are you going to find your juice? And I don't mean the conventional stuff. I mean really, where are you going to find your juice? What is it that you're going to do on a daily basis? How are you going to keep yourself? Is it going to be being fit? Is it going to be singing? Is it going to be reading? Is it going to be going out and feeding the hungry dogs, taking care of people on the streets? What is it that's going to give you juice, that's going to give you drive to keep going again and again and again? And don't ever be afraid to go and look at the dark side of you. The dark side is there. It's as much as there as the happy and the bright, chirpy one. It's like day and night. You can't avoid it, right? But you don't always have to, sorry to say, F yourself up trying to discover that dark side. There's great ways of discovering that dark side. There's headstands. We do all sorts of stuff at the 21. Long runs in the rain, powerlifting sets to failure, you know. I mean, getting your body fat percentage down to inhuman levels. There's all sorts of stuff where you can get your sense of significance. You don't always have to do drugs or smoke or drink alcohol or whatever it is, your thing that you go to deal with stress. Mobile phones. We were just chatting about it in the room back, like we were talking about addictions and we said, do you think mobile phones is it? Maybe. I don't know what you're using it for. But whatever your thing is, find your juice. And don't be afraid to be your own unique, beautiful self. Thank you.